discussion about Carl and how he's impacted everyone. For those of you who don't know, I was department head in animal vet science after Carl, but I've had a lot of connection to the family for years and years and years. I moved to Moscow in '95. Salaries at the university weren't very good in '95, so I had to find somebody to mow my lawn. And Daniel Hunt volunteered, but I don't think I ever saw Daniel actually mow the lawn. I think it was Carl that mowed my lawn. And so it was really great, a great situation for an assistant professor to see a full professor mowing your lawn. I will say my lawn was probably about the half of this side of the tent, so it really wasn't that big a deal. I was just too cheap to buy a lawnmower. But Carl stepped up right away and impressed me as somebody who wanted to take on responsibilities and impact the community. And I think the words that Dean Perillo said is that this is a legacy. Carl left an impression on thousands of students. He touched really the entire community, whether that be Moscow, whether that be the beef industry or the nutrition industry, the Pacific Northwest. Carl was connected. So as Dean Perillo said, he had a 36-year career at the U of I, focused on beef production and nutrition, and he was without a doubt engaged with the industry. He was not one to sit in his office. He was out and about, always looking for opportunities, mostly for students, trying to figure out how to connect students to the industry because he felt that there was a great place to have a career, to have a life, and really enjoy the beauties of Idaho and the Pacific Northwest. For those of you who didn't know, he also was very engaged in athletics. He loved the student athlete. I don't think there was a faculty member that was more interested. Well, maybe that's not true. He liked all students. He really was looking out for every single student. And he didn't like the A+ students. He liked the B's and the C's because he saw the potential and wanted to push them to the potential. The A+ students, they were going to vet school, and as far as Carl was concerned, there was a lost cause at that point. We didn't have any of the vets to but Carl cared about making sure that every student understood that there was tremendous opportunity to get a college education, and he was going to make sure that, without a doubt, that they were connected for a career once they graduated. He cared and cared deeply. And as I said, he really cared about the student athletes. He had a few in his class, but then when the opportunity came about to be the university athletic faculty academic rep, Carl stepped up. He wanted to do that because he wanted to make sure those student athletes understood they were there to get an education first and foremost, and then maybe advance in an athletic career, but really first and foremost focus on athletics or academics, and make sure you knew what you could do at the end of that college education and college athletic environment, so that you were moving forward in a career. So I forget how many years. Daniel, how you do that? 10 years?
More like 6. I'd say.
More like 6. He was invested in. I don't think it added any more time to Carl's agenda because he went to every single athletic event that was on campus, whether it be women's volleyball, women's basketball, men's basketball, football. I mean, I don't think he missed. There must not have been any fun at home at hunt in the evenings because Carl always wanted to go to those athletic events. And maybe for some of you who don't know, Carl in the last few years was very active in the Sojourners Alliance in Moscow. And this is a transitional housing facility for homeless men, women, and families, trying to help them get off the streets, find a way to engage in the community, to get safe housing. And so he was involved. There was no question. He cared about community. He cared about people. As he cared about people, as I said, I tried to calculate how many students he actually taught, but that probably wasn't fair because it had to be well over a couple of thousand over his 36 years. But I think what really is that he touched thousands of students. It wasn't just the students in his classroom that he touched. He really reached out to whether it be an animal science student or a student that cared about the beef industry. If they were in ag econ, you know, he was involved with them there as if they were in animal science. And again, as I said, you know, he cared about those student athletes. He went out and found those students. He found those students that needed guidance. He found those students that needed to be picked up and really guided to find themselves, to find their careers, to find their opportunities. And so I think that was, you know, really what was most impressive. And I was a beneficiary of a number of those students that came into my graduate program. Carl found them. He said, Mark, this is somebody I can guarantee you this is going to be a winner for you. Yeah, they might not have had the best grades or the best background or whatever, but Carl had that ability and insight to recognize the potential of somebody. And I wish I had that skill. It really was great. And not only did he recognize it, but then he guided them. And he held their hand. And he would push them. And he would chastise them. But ultimately, in every way possible, Carl assisted them. And I think the Steer Year program is one way that it really defines the thoroughness of the way he touched students. Not only did he teach them the practical, day-to-day operations of what goes on in a feedlot, but then he went out and found the resources to help them. Found the resources to help them get the degree to move on. It just was amazing. And then after the fact, he knows where he knew where everybody was and where they were in life and how things were turning out for him, and if there were ways that he could help them, he would help them. And lastly, I'm just going to say he loved his family. I talked about the lawn mowing, you know, the reality. Carl did because, you know, he wanted to go down to Arizona spring break and watch his beloved Cardinals in spring training, and this was his excuse to generate a few dollars so the family could go down and watch baseball. But he loved Daniel, he loved Catherine, and certainly Martha. I had the great pleasure of Catherine working in my lab for 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, she did a PhD with me, and you know, brilliant, but she's a part of the family. It was really a pleasure to be a part of the Hunt family in that respect, to be able to touch them on a daily basis. And as Dean Perella said, you know, I don't think there was a difference really when Carl retired. We saw him as much in the building as when he was teaching. It's just that he wasn't necessarily in his office. He was more in the hallway or somebody else's office saying, Mark, I need a new feed truck. Can you find some money from the experiment station to partner? And so he was always looking out for what goes on. And I'm going to pass the mic here. I enjoyed having Catherine in the lab, but I also enjoyed watching Daniel as he grew up over the years. He had a reputation, if you don't know Daniel. He sung in the Vandal choir, and so one thing, he was one of the bigger guys in the choir, but there's 100 people singing up there on Dan Buckvich's choir, at least 100 people, and it was always great music. But the one thing you could always find Daniel, not because he was tall, but because everybody spread out, because he was always dancing, always dancing. And so it's you know, my honor to pass this mic to Daniel to talk a little bit about Carl from the family perspective. So, Daniel.